Hi, it's Trevor from Ostrich Longneck. In my second video detailing the build of the crashed X-Wing on Jakku, I am going to build up the X-Wing and then weather it, hopefully to look like a ship that's been in the desert for a very long time. So without further ado, let's get cracking. Oh, I wonder how Han and Luke are doing in their makeshift prison.
Use the Force, Luke.
The first snag I hit with the model was that I'd ordered it directly from Japan and the instructions were totally in Japanese. This proved to be a minor inconvenience, as it was easy to find an English translation on Google. Domo arigato, Mr. Roboto. Domo arigato, Mr. Google. Thank you very much, oh Mr. Roboto. At first I was going to wing it, but I was glad for the translation later, as some of the parts had do not cut and do not glue as instructions, which were kind of important. And there was an option to choose between Luke Skywalker's Red 5 fighter or a generic version of the X-Wing, which was confusing even after the translation. The parts were really well molded and required very little extra work, as there was a minimum of flash on the sprue trees. All I had to do was file down the nubs where the parts were removed from the sprues. The kit was not advertised as an easy kit or snap fit kit, but the parts held together tightly when I test fitted them. At times they had to be pried apart quite forcibly in order to apply some glue. Early into the build, I noticed some parts needed to be painted in a dark metallic color. I separated all of these from their sprues and gave them some gunmetal shooting from the hip. Oops, I mean the can. Haha! See what I did there? Gunmetal, hip. No? Okay, moving along. Once dry, these parts were slapped straight onto the build. The first half of the X-Wing assembly came together fairly easily, without much effort, because I'm really observant when it comes to small details. Not. Oh! I accidentally missed painting one of the air intakes. Luckily most of the wing assembly had not been glued yet, so it was a simple matter to deconstruct the intake and paint it. Once both wings were built, I could finally figure out how the X-Wing configuration worked. The wings of the finished model could be moved between flight mode and attack mode with little effort. For the purposes of the diorama, the wings needed to be open in full attack mode, and I would probably have to glue them that way. After the main parts were laid out, I gave the X-Wing its primer coat of German red-brown, which also served as the first rust coat. All the parts were given a coat, even the pilot seat. I was careful to mask off the metallic parts. I placed the crocodile clips in areas which would be hidden once the model was finally put together. After the primer coat, I sprayed some camouflage black-brown in areas which were more likely to receive more exposure, such as the fuselage and rear engines. I then applied some regular Vallejo rust to parts of the fighter where I guessed the metal was a bit thicker than the rest of the ship. In between coats I did a quick airbrush clean. I emptied out the unused paint, wiped off the worst of it.
That's what she said.
Added thinner medium to the airbrush, blocked the nozzle, and did a quick backspray to clear the needle. Lather, rinse, repeat until everything looks clean. It's over in less than a minute.
That's what she said.
Then the cup is ready for more paint. I've often heard it told that paint needs to be the consistency of milk. I'm never sure if it's supposed to be full cream, low fat or half and half. Others have suggested a muddy water consistency. Personally, I swirl the paint around in the cup, just a little, and if it looks watery but some of the paint sticks to the sides, I'm good to go. The next coat was a light rust coat, where the X-Wing may have been exposed to high temperatures. I mostly use Vallejo paints and prefer a 50-50 mix, which I guess looks like full cream milk, but sometimes, for a semi-transparent coat, I thin it down to a low-fat milk consistency. The next color is orange rust. Because it's quite overwhelming, I spray it very sparingly to the parts of the X-Wing which may have been extremely exposed to the elements. I thinned it down to 2 parts thinners with 1 part paint, otherwise it would just dominate everything. First a test spray, and then I kinda sneak up on the model and give it a little scare here and there. Okay, I can breathe again. It doesn't look too bad. The wings get the same treatment, using the amazing sneak up and scare technique which I've just invented. The final rust color is yellow ochre. Oops. Here's why some guys don't like Vallejo. The nozzle gets a little too clogged when the paint dries, and should always be checked before squeezing the heck out of it like I just did. Okay, so I'm an idiot.
I'm pitiful!
The yellow ochre is applied to simulate water streaks. I figured that Jakku probably has a rainy season sometimes. So some subtle water streaks weren't totally out of place. When doing water streaks, I usually find it easier to turn the model upside down and then to paint top to bottom. This way it's easier to get the effect that the streaks fade in color and taper as they travel further down the model. The final step in the rust coat application is a good coat of varnish. I used a high gloss coat because I figure the next coat, the Vallejo chipping effects coat, would work better on top of a gloss coat. Before continuing, I did a quick test fit to see if the model would fit on the diorama base which I chose. It'll look more or less okay depending on how I positioned the X-Wing model. I gave it a few good coats of chipping medium and then let it dry overnight. The next day I broke out the Iwata airbrush. I needed to use a good quality airbrush because I had to spray a very dilute coat of paint. Skimmed milk consistency, I guess. I had to apply the paint at a low pressure in order to coat the model with the thinnest layer I could manage. The chipping medium began to work quickly, and hairline cracks immediately appeared in the paint which gave it a glorious effect. I carefully coated all of the external parts of the model, including the fuselage and wings. Once dry, I used a Q-tip and a hard bristle brush to remove the outer layer of paint in areas where I thought the effects of the desert would have been the worst. I tried to leave random areas where the paint was a bit more hardy and able to withstand the extreme temperatures on the surface of Jakku. The end result was a very old and weathered X-Wing. I especially liked the finely cracked surface created by the chipping medium. The very last step in the weathering process was to apply a wash of Starship filth over the entire model. Because I've been using acrylics and water-based varnishes, it's safe to use an oil-based wash without damaging the lower layers. To prepare the wash, I mixed some of the Starship filth with odorless solvent. Initially it was a bit thin, but as I applied the wash, I added more Starship filth, especially to areas where the X-Wing was likely to get very filthy, such as the engines and wing mechanisms. I wiped off the excess with Q-tips and used an old rag in larger areas. The end result of the oil wash was quite subtle. The paint had transformed into a dull, faded color, and parts of the X-Wing fighter looked a little oily and neglected. The wash also brought out the fine cracks in the surface paint quite nicely. Overall, I was satisfied with the result. I think we can call it done, and in the next video I'll be tackling the diorama. So I'll be seeing you soon, and thanks for watching.